Suns fans, you know what time it is in the PHX.
Empire of the Suns.
Phoenix Suns.
The Empire of the Suns podcast is brought to you by Sonic. Drive to your nearest Sonic location and try their new Choose Any Two for $7 deal for a limited time only.
Empire of the Suns.
With the Sonic 2 for $7 deal, you get 2 iconic menu items for only $7. Choose from the foot-long quarter-pound chili cheese coney, the juicy Sonic cheeseburger, or crispy chicken sandwich. Any 2 items, any combination. You can even double up for a limited time only at Sonic.
Hello there, and welcome to the Empire of the Suns podcast. My name is Kellen Olson, joined as always by Kevin Zimmerman. What's up?
Hi, how are you, baseball guy?
Energetic, happy to be here, baseball guy. Game 5, I'm either going to see a very fun night for the D-backs or a team win a championship. So either way, we'll see something pretty cool. As a little bit of a D-backs fan still from my childhood, just a little bit. Would much rather see them win tonight, but hey, you know, getting to be there for a team winning a championship would be cool in another way, I guess. It would be weird to do that again, though, after doing it in...
Are they allowed to jump in the pool if they win, if the Rangers win?
Oh, dude, I haven't even thought about all this. That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot my waterproof. I bought a waterproof phone case specifically in case I was going to go in the D-backs locker room when they were winning in the DS or the NLCS. And I didn't take into account that I could potentially be going into the Rangers locker room tonight. Oh, well. We will find a way to persevere.
Perhaps the pool, anyway.
I'm not going to the pool, brother. No Cam Cox jump for me. I can guarantee that. That's not happening. Let's talk about basketball. Do you want to have the same exact conversations again? Because that's basically what we can do if you want. The Suns are 2-2. There's a fly on me, so if you're watching the video on YouTube, you got to see me snatch it out of the air. That definitely happened, right? Can someone...
Yeah.
Upload the replay. Please don't. I don't want to
dub
see
that. Dub in a fly being thrown.
No, I don't want to see that at all. The Suns are 2-2. They won a game and they lost a game. They lost a game because of a fourth quarter meltdown.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that last week. And then they blew out the Jazz. They didn't really blow out the Warriors by any means, but we're more or less having the same conversation here, Kevin, where the team is really, really good with Kevin Durant on the floor. They are not so good when he's off the floor. The defense looks pretty fine. But the role players and the depth in general does not look equipped for a situation like this where only one of the stars is healthy. I think now if there's anything I'm curious about after 4 games, it's like, okay, how much better do these guys look? The secondary options, Grayson and Eric Gordon bounce back. We'll talk about that, but more so the guys coming off the bench in this current rotation. Are those guys going to look better when another star is in? Like, is 2 stars enough, which it should be? Mm-hmm. But this is an extreme version right now. The latest on the injuries, Kev, Bradley Beal has a low back spasm. That's what it's being labeled as now. It went from back tightness to back spasms. I don't know when that happened, but Book, ankle sprain. We're still where we're at. We are being told there is no timeline. And then if you listened very closely to Frank Vogel's pregame press conference yesterday, he actually alluded to a timeline for Bradley
He said
Beal.
There's no timeline, but there is a timeline, yeah.
But he's like, we're just being cautious and sticking to the timeline. You're like, oh, you just said that. Oh, whatever. Max had a great tweet. Our friend Max, who's been on the podcast before when you were having a child or something. I can't remember.
One of those things.
It was like the Maverick series, I want to say. But he said the Suns treat injury news like it's nuclear launch codes. And it's like, yeah, like just... I think there's a benefit there that they are not willing to share, both for just like clarity's sake for the discussion of the team, but more so like the anxiousness of their fan base, because there's now tweets going up from like the lineup data automated kind of accounts, like the fantasy accounts that say Vogel, no timeline for Booker, and someone will read that and be like, is he out 2 months? What's going on? It's like he's probably going to be back in a week or 2, I would assume, but whatever. It's just a little baby rant there as opposed to my rant from last week that was much more profound. So we don't know. I would guess Book's back within a week, maybe 2 at the most. Bradley Beal, I have no idea. Backs are a lot more. We deal with ankle sprains all the time. We do not deal with weird back things all the time, and I don't know
muscles,
if it's even a weird back things. Yeah, but it's just like the back is someone not with a terrible back, but a back that will just act up from time to time. Alex Weiner and I were doing a stand-up following Game 3 of the World Series, and like when we got done, I was just like,
Yeah.
Like my back started tightening up just because I was
standing
up straight with a
sit
microphone
down, do a crack
for 10 minutes. Yeah, your old thing. See, now that joke that I made fun of you for is coming back to bite me. But needless to say, they need both of these guys back, Kevin, because we're starting to get to the point now where I don't want to say that they are going to... Plateau is not the right word, like stand in place, stay in place, run in place, whatever is not the right way to put it either. But you can only improve so much when you're not getting a good look at what your team is supposed to look like.
I do think there's value, and we've seen, I think the big thing from our last podcast was value in seeing Grayson Allen and Eric Gordon turn a corner a little bit. Like, they're not going to score 20 points every game like this probably. Obviously, roles reduced. They're going to hit bumps in the road where they just have bad games, I think, because neither of them, again, are like super great on-ball guys who they're being asked to do too much. But you see just imagine when they're asked to do a little less, to stand a little more and just shoot, and to make playmaking easier on them when they're catching on the weak side. Things like that. I think the last week we've seen like just how important they are. And honestly, I'm more impressed this week because just the Utah and how San Antonio probably should have gone.
Yeah.
Looked like, okay, this team can lock down, play defense.
They should be 4-0 right now.
Yeah, and the floor spacing has really come out, I think, the last two games where they're just like tripping and finding themselves with 15-point leads without necessarily putting the hammer down on defense, honestly. Like, they've played good defense. Could they be better? Yeah. Especially in the moments where they've blown leads, for sure. But I don't know. Again, not much to talk about there, but you see the positives. You see why they constructed the roster this way, and you see why their roster is very dependent on the good players being around. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, I was just kind of being cranky. Like, there are different elements here. Like, if I'm looking at the stats from the last two games, 60 assists, 30 turnovers. We talked about 39 and 39. The last two games, they really cleaned up the turnovers in the Utah game.
The ball movement was really clean.
And then the ball movement was the best it's been in the San Antonio game, at least through 2.5 quarters.
Yeah.
Utah game, they were up by, I want to say, nearly 20 in the second quarter. Grayson Allen and Kevin Durant go on an 11-0 run in the early third quarter to get it above 30, and Utah was on a second game of a back-to-back. They just didn't have enough in them, didn't want to put up a fight there, whatever it was, and those kinds of situations we've seen all the time. Speaking of situations we've seen all the time, the Suns were up 17 early in the mid-second quarter, in the early second quarter, on Tuesday against San Antonio. And then even in the mid-third quarter, they were up 20, and then they were up 15, and then all of a sudden, San Antonio hit 7 threes in the third quarter to just kind of hang around enough. And then all of a sudden, it's a 5-point game. Durant has to come back in with over 8 minutes left, but then they stabilize a bit, but then San Antonio is hanging around. Durant makes Keldon Johnson slip, and that feels like the game is done. And I tweeted, like, that should be all.
Yeah.
And then Vassell takes a really tough three. No one boxes out Wembanyama, so like we can talk about like the foul. Should there be a foul? We're not really going to talk about it, honestly. We'll just say like he got fouled. They didn't call it. But if there's a play to point at and be mad about or upset about as a fan, it should be that one where no one boxed out Wembanyama.
It was KD and Okogie. Just both didn't even have anyone around them. Didn't look for anyone around them.
No timeout there. It makes sense sometimes. I understand the logic in not calling a timeout there because you don't let Pop set his defense and you just get the ball to Durant. You expect him to be fouled in the corner like he was for 3 or 4 seconds. And then by then it's like there's been enough time that's passed that they shouldn't be able to just run in and get a layup. Josh Okogie nearly saved the game, by the way. If you watch the replay back, he so quickly takes 2 steps over and then gets verticality straight up. But Keldon Johnson made a really tough finish at the rim. No foul call there. I'm interested to see the last 2-minute report there, if they call that a clean.
I think it will be, but
it should be.
There
but
was
it was
contact,
one of those bang plays.
Yeah.
And then we'll see the L2M report for Durant, and if he was fouled as well, that should be coming out really any minute here. But then the play at the end doesn't work. But the timeout, I think it makes sense to get it to Durant right away. But the reason why you always call a timeout in those situations to advance the ball is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Now, if San Antonio steals the ball in the backcourt, they can just call a timeout themselves. I believe they still had one left. But with all of that said, you have to call a timeout there, I think.
I think so.
I think it's the box out 1, the timeout 2, and then no foul call 3.
Or just don't let them come back from 20 down.
All ranked below what is right here, which is just don't let them come back from 20. This is like a young team. They clearly were showing a little bit of fight, just kind of lock in for a little bit, but they just weren't able to, and we've seen those all the time. And Eric Gordon, who is pretty by the books when he talks, but he does have some poignant moments from time to time in like the couple of weeks that we've talked to him, just like said, we know better. And that was him kind of alluding to what we all know in the room and what we all know watching that people don't really say. And like, he didn't go on to expand what he meant by that, but we all know what he meant by that. Like, they know better. Like, they know better than to let a young, plucky team hang around, because then anything can happen. You can get a foul call, a foul not called that should have. But to your point, in these two games that should have both been blowout wins, Durant 20 of 30 from the field, Gordon 17 of 28, Allen 11 of 18. The three-pointers, Gordon has 7, Allen has 8. The rest of the supporting cast, though, Nurkic 7 of 18, Jordan Goodwin 5 of 16, Yuta 6 of 15, 5 of 14 from Okogie, 5 for 11 from Nasir Little, and then 7 for 10 from Drew Eubanks. So the efficiency for the other guys just hasn't really been there, and more so when Durant isn't out there. Sam Cooper, also a former guest on this episode or podcast, really struggling saying like the wrong. I have to keep saying excuse me for misspeaking. Goodness gracious. Through 4 games, Phoenix's offensive rating with KD is 117.6 on the floor. When he's off the floor, it drops to 81.7. Their true shooting percentage is 47.4, which is rough. If you're not familiar with true shooting percentage and exactly where it goes, that is really, really bad. And that's what you would more or less expect. The defense, Kevin, we were pretty much headed for it through a half of, or even 2.5 quarters. We were headed towards, man, they've just been really solid defensively here for all 4 of these games, essentially. And then the Spurs score 70 points in the second half. And it's the Spurs team that, yes, they're hitting dribble, pull-up threes, all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, like, you just have to be locked in more. And they weren't locked in, and it was just slippage. That's all it was. It happens. And we move on. We move forward.
Do you want to talk about Wemby? Because we're in between. We're going to see him again, but
Yeah, we're recording on Wednesday. I hate to say it was what you expect, because you've never seen anything like him before, but it was what you expect, where he made 7 plays I've never seen anyone make before in a basketball court. Like the little flip up and one thing behind him when he just like reached his arm up, and
if you foul him here, his wrist is still like 10 feet long, so it's just like, oh, I can still operate. You can whack me in like the elbow area.
Well, he can put the ball within like 2 feet of the rim in a situation like that, where he's going behind himself. That block on, there were 2 blocks on Grayson Allen. There was one where he just completely enveloped him in the first half, and then the second half it was like a late recovery where he still got there in time.
It was like he was the one where Grayson was on the right side of the wing, and I think I talked about this earlier before the season, just like people can't conceptualize in their brain like, oh, Wemby, I don't know who was atop the key, but Wemby was like kind of on someone else atop the key. Grayson catches the ball on the right wing, and Wemby like takes one step and like can reach the release of the ball. Like it's just reading that is completely different. I'm going to shout out my guy, Mike Christie, who I don't know if he's still at the University of Arizona, but this image, look, we can show images on this podcast of Wemby's long arms contesting a Kevin Durant shot. Just looks like it's AI generated. Someone said that on Twitter.
There were fun 2 showdown moments. That was KD isolating on Wemby at the end of the first quarter, tried to get a screen to come over, didn't really work, and then he just isolated against him anyway, got to the step back on the baseline. Wemby couldn't even block that, and that was like a welcome to the league moment for him. And then at the end of the second quarter, KD got a half step on him on a baseline out of bounds play, dunks on him. Wemby comes back down the other way and dunks on, I think, Eubanks I want to say. And that was insane too. And he was a real deal, man. Vassell looked really good. If you haven't been paying attention to the Spurs, which I don't blame you because they were awful last year, but if you were able to at least keep tabs on them like you and I are able to with our profession, he had a really good year last year before he got hurt. I want to say it was 20 games in, and then he was out for the rest of the year. 38. He played 38 games last year, excuse me, but he kind of had one of those years where it's like, no 3-and-D man you just are.
No.
You can do the scoring a bit, and that's why he got paid a lot of money, and we saw last night he hit some really difficult shots. He's a really good defender. I think we know that Keldon's pretty solid as it is.
Good game from Keldon, yeah.
What exactly is. Zach Collins, another guy where, like, yeah, he's solid.
Stay healthy.
Is what it is. So that's why you and I, in terms of our Spurs optimism, if you want to call it that, when we were talking about them going into the season, like if Wemby is like a star right away, they do have some interesting pieces around him to at least be maybe competent. I still think they're going to be bad. Maybe it's too
Their depth is
early.
not like Charles Bassey, all due respect stuff. Like if he's in
Jetty
rotation.
is carrying the thing, and I think part of what Pop is doing as well with Sohan starting instead of Trey Jones, which probably should flip soon now, is so Trey Jones can lead that second unit, because that second unit won't have much if he's not there. But with that being said, Sohan in the starting lineup, it's just like you got to set up Wemby for success. That should be first and foremost what it is. But here we are telling Greg Popovich how to do his job. Probably shouldn't do that.
No.
Probably shouldn't do that. Coming up, like we said, like you teased, Spurs on Thursday. For those of you waiting for injury updates and you're listening to this at some point today, there will be an injury report where probably again Beal's going to be out, and probably again Booker's going to be doubtful or questionable. Maybe I would pencil in, Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
They play on Saturday at 10 a.m. against Philly. That doesn't seem really realistic, just because it's you're playing. How I'm trying to do the math in my head. That's like 36 hours after the game ends, basically, against San Antonio
Thursday.
That you're playing again, and you're flying across the country to Philadelphia. I would guess that's not a game for Beal or Booker to play in. But then after that, they play the second game of a back-to-back in Detroit on Sunday, and then they're in Chicago on Wednesday. So I would circle those two just in terms of how we're used to seeing things line up. And then if they're not able to get back there after Chicago on Wednesday, November 8th, they're going to fly home that night, I would assume, and then they're home for nearly a week, or just about a week with 3 games. So somewhere in like that 5-game sample. So basically what I'm saying is like they're not going to miss at least 10 more games together. Like we're going to see at least one of them back here pretty soon. I feel very confident in saying that, and I think it'll be sooner rather than later. But here I am just throwing wild guesses at the wall as usual, and sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong.
We don't know the timeline.
We know there is a timeline, but we just don't know what it is. It's good to know that there is an actual timeline that exists, but
I like to know there's
not privy to information. Is that the right use of privy, Mr. Editor Man?
I think so. I just like knowing
man.
There's a plan. It makes me feel better inside when people have plans for expensive things, for human bodies who are athletes, such things.
Yeah. I think we're done. I think that's it. We can really, the thing is, we want to expand more on, like, Jordan Goodwin didn't play well last night. Nasir Little had a moment where he hit 2 threes, and I was like, here we go, Nasir Little, excuse me. But then in the second half, kind of fell apart. He had 5 fouls. We just want to give them a better chance to have like a discussion of what their games are once those guys are there. It's the same thing with like Grayson and Eric. It's like when they play against
their
teams
roles,
like this, they're going to have these moments, and they've stepped up in the way we've expected them to. Nurkic and Eubanks, same kind of thing. Like it just makes sense to have more of that conversation when those guys are rolling.
We need those narratives to develop. We need ebbs and flows more.
No, we should actually automatically react disingenuously to the way the guys are. And just,
the sky is falling. The Phoenix Suns are losing basketball games when they're supposed to be very good.
This is why you don't do load management. This is why the load management era is bad, even though these two guys are very clearly hurt.
I think they're hurt. Yeah.
They are. You don't have to say think. They are hurt. Yeah. They are injured. All right, man.
All right.
Clayton Tune?
Tune time.
It's tune time? Get it done, Clayton. Josh got us halfway there.
Thank you for your service, Joshua Dobbs. Now go on your next journey in life.
Boy.
To the Minnesota
Once
Vikings.
NFL defenses figure out how you do things, they sure figure you out, huh? Yoicks. Hope he does well in Minnesota. Seems like a lovely place. Hope they treat him well. Hope he...
They've got a nice facility out there, I've heard from...
Hope they have good rocket engineering programs over there or whatever else he he needs,
And you did the salute.
Yes,
Thank you for your service, sir. All right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right. Go Snakes. They're alive. Not dead yet.
Still alive.
Bye.